Gets corner, beyond Bent. Janssen! And Blackburn Rovers are 18 minutes away from a Premiership return.
As far as Stewart, just outside the penalty area, clips it central for David Dunn. David Dunn equalises! It just had to be. Dax corner and it goes, glance towards goal, and Rovers have taken the lead. And Charlie Mulgrew has scored his 14th of the season. It may well be the goal that sends Rovers back into the Championship.
Good evening, Rovers fans, and welcome back to another live edition of On the Other Side with me, Ryan Hildred from Rovers Chat. Last time out, it was that last gasp draw for Rovers as our grinding run of form to the season continued away at Cardiff City. But a draw's a draw. But next up for me, it's Rovers' biggest game of the season and a chance for us just to remove ourselves out of any talk of relegation once and for all as we take on Derby County tomorrow evening at Ewood Park. And I'm delighted to be joined by two Derby fans, as you can see, Corey and Jason from the Rams Review podcast. How are you doing, Corey?
Ryan, I'm well. Thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here and chat with you again.
Yeah, and you, Corey. Thanks for coming back. And Jason, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm all right. Thanks, Ryan. Sorry I missed you on ours the other day. But no, great to be on. Thank you.
No, it's good to be on your show as well. It was nice to chat about all things Rovers and Derby. We're in similar territory at the moment, so we shared the pain, didn't we, Corey? Rovers fans joining us this evening. If you're not subscribed to our YouTube channel, please hit that subscribe button, of course. Please turn on all notifications using that bell symbol. And, of course, give this video a huge like and all of our other videos as well. And Andy Watson has been just pushing out loads of content recently. Go and check out his interview with Stuart from the Academy, and he's done something else around some analytics and other things as well. So go and check out those videos. Really recommend those watches. Super Chat is available as it always is, but as we always do, just a couple of reminders to Rovers fans. We are sponsored by Blue Rose Capital, and we are sponsored by 6yardsout.com.
The Rovers Chat YouTube channel is proudly sponsored by 6yardsout.com. They've got retro football from every era with mugs, phone cases and much more. They also have plenty of Rovers goods, including apparel with the famous 94-95 season and this season's kit. Check them out using the link in the description below.
Thank you to our very kind sponsors, Blue Rose Capital and 6yardsout.com. And a very big thank you to Alexander, who spotted the haircut. Yes, I was there yesterday, Alexander. It's been trimmed. You've all seen that disgraceful barnet of mine since January. It's been cut, so I am absolutely buzzing with it. So there we go. And Rick has also had his ears lowered as well. So love it. So Jason, Corey, let's kick on with this preview then. And Corey, I'm going to start with you. Derby are a team that have been there or thereabouts, with the playoffs for the last few seasons. 4 playoff finishes in the last 7 seasons, and then top half in the other seasons in those other 3. This season, Derby have really struggled at the bottom end of the table. So first and foremost, has that surprised you?
Yes and no, Ryan. I think to the degree which Derby have struggled has surprised me, and I know it surprised Jason and a few other Derby fans as well. I think a lot of people in the Derby fan base were very bullish about Derby's kind of hopes for this season. I think at the end of last season, it was a decent kind of end to the season. Derby had a late kind of, I wouldn't say necessarily promotion push, but they finished 10th, and you get the good vibes going. We're going to build. We took 𝒂𝐿𝐻𝐿 from one season to a next, which is a strange thing for Derby to have continuity of manager. And we thought, okay, this might be the kind of season. I know Jason and myself weren't as bullish as some other fans. We kind of predicted 8 to 10 finish would be really solid for this team. And boy, were we wrong, Jason? What's gone wrong could go wrong, and it's just been a real struggle. It's been really disappointing, and I don't think any of us really saw it coming. I know in the first game that these two teams played back in the autumn, Rovers spanked Derby 4-0. There's a lot of reasons behind that. Fitness-wise was probably one of the issues where Derby were just not at it, and that kind of plagued them throughout the fall. And obviously, they made the decision to sack 𝒂𝒂𝐻𝐿𝐻 and to. And I got not bring in Wayne Rooney, but make Wayne Rooney the the man now, so to speak. And Wayne's train was going perfectly fine for a few games, but I would say Jason, the last maybe 10 games, Derby have just been, it's one of the poorest Derby sides we've seen in a long time, Ryan. And I don't think there's one thing either that you can point to that says this is specifically why Derby is struggling, right? It's a wide range of things. Injuries, all teams get them. Understand that. Derby in the first part of the season had a lot of attackers injured. Second half of the season, this part of the season, now they're having a lot of defenders that are injured. They've lost influential midfielder Christian Bielik due to an ACL tear, his second in 2 years, who at the time of his injury was arguably the best player in the championship. With his impact and everything like that. You can see the stats back up for Derby, but the way he was playing, and I know Ivan Toney's good, Emi Buendia's good, I've got that, Adam Armstrong's good, but the effect that he was having on this team was significant. Then you've got the off-the-field issues with the protracted takeover, which is just taking forever, which I'm sure we'll talk about. You've got players not being paid on time, which is a distraction, and all these little niggly little things are taking 5 and 10 and 15% off the performance. Another thing on that, Derby's very reliant on young players and youth players coming through. They had a fantastic season last year. These young players, Jason Knight, Lee Buchanan, Louis Sibley, Max Bird, and all of them have, Lee Buchanan's probably arguably the one anomaly in this because he's done okay and he's had a bit of a decent season. But Max Bird hasn't really progressed from last season. If anything, he's regressed a little bit. Sibley's not amounted to what we expected him to do this season when you were, we want this player to grow this much, and he's not grown that much. And Jason Knight, he's gone off the boil even the last 10 games or so, and he's been phenomenally consistent for Derby. So it's just a lot of different things that are taken a little bit off this performance, and that's why, Derby are in this position. But to answer your question, that was a long-winded way to get to the answer to your question. Yeah, it is a little bit of a surprise in a way, but also Derby's been papered over the cracks for several years with various loan players and different things. And so it's all just kind of boiled up to one, and you're going to get Derby's just having one of them seasons.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jason, Corey's touched on a few things there. As an outsider looking in, it was 10th last season, but it just felt like you had a good season of transition from obviously Frank Lampard to Philip Cocu, two players who have played at the highest level. And it felt like for me that this season was the one where Cocu was really going to make his stamp on the side. He's obviously been sacked in November with Derby, bottom of the table. So where do you think it went wrong for Cocu? Because it should have been better than this, shouldn't it?
Yeah, yes and no. I think that 10th place finish last season was, in my opinion, false. I don't think Derby were that good. There was a lot of times last season where performances were very, very similar to what we've seen this season. But we were kind of on the lucky side of results last season. The start of this season, I mean, we were not in good form at all. We were not. We didn't look like winning. Obviously, you came to Pride Park early on in the season, and you saw exactly what Derby were made of. And you weren't the only team to tear us apart in the first 4 or 5 games. And I think it was 13 games in before we got our first win, which surprisingly was against Norwich away. But and Norwich definitely had an off day that day. But like Corey said, papering over the cracks is a big word, is a kind of a phrase that's been used at Derby for a while. And whilst the 10th place finish last season was solid, I think we lost 4 out of the last 6 or 5 out of the last 7 in the league last season, something like that. We did finish higher than a lot expected us to finish. I think we finished higher than, if we were being honest and genuine when we looked across the whole season, we shouldn't have finished as high as we did. That's not to say that the expectations going into this season weren't high or higher. We still thought, as Corey said, it's the first time in quite some time that a manager's gone, from one season to another. And there were signs last season. Don't get me wrong. There were signs under Cocu of the way that we could play. And that's been very reminiscent this season, even though he's left. There's been signs since Rooney came in. There's been signs of the way that Derby can play. The second half against Norwich at the weekend, I wouldn't say Derby battered Norwich, but Derby were value for something out of the game. But the biggest Achilles heel of this season's been scoring. I mean, we've not got the greatest defensive record, but scoring's been by far the worst thing. And at the end of the day, if you ain't scoring goals, you're not winning football matches. And that's been a big issue, especially when really over the last, 6 or 7 years, appreciate different players are involved. OK, Derby have kind of always conceded goals. They've never been the strongest at the back, but they've always been pretty free scoring as well. We'd always score, 50, 60, 70 goals a season. I think you look back over the last 5 or 6, we've always kind of done that. And then the one season this year, I mean, even last season, we were putting the ball in the back of the net on a much more regular basis than what we've done this year. And as Corey alluded to a minute ago, there's not really one thing you can put it down to. Okay, yes, the strikers aren't performing, and I would fully agree the strikers have not performed this season really at all. But yes, that's their job, but you do expect other players to chip in as well, which hasn't really been the case. And strikers can't do all the work. They need those certain balls putting in, and that kind of thing, which is just been lacking this season at Derby. So whilst we looked at last season, it was that word transition. It's one of those words that I don't think many you'll use when you have a bad season, but I don't think it's necessarily one that you want to use all that often. But ultimately, we look at the league table as where we sit at the moment. Derby are worse off, seriously worse off than we were last season. So last season, actually, when you look at it as a whole picture, wasn't as much of a transition as we may well have thought. Maybe this year's the transition. Who knows?
Yeah, and Corey, I just want to move on to Wayne Rooney and talk about him. So keeping up the trend of top level players as managers, Rooney stepping into the role after Cocu and Lampard, of course. And if we look at Derby's record under Lampard, which we've got as a graphic here, if these are just the games that Rooney's been manager for, the 30, 14th in the league overall, which obviously isn't too bad. So what is the view of the job that Rooney's done so far at Derby? And has he changed any elements of what Cocu brought? Oh, I think you're muted, Corey.
I knew. There we go. I was trying to be professional. I think it changes week by week. I think when Rooney first took over I'll get to this playing style in a minute, part of your question, Ryan. But I think when he first came in, it wasn't a surprise that he got the job. And he picked up results, he picked up wins, he picked up points where he could, and everything was going well. And then all of a sudden, he hits this sticky patch where Derby don't look like themselves. They're not performing really like they should be. And then there was a couple times also that he got out coached by a couple different experienced managers, Chris Hughton at Forest being one of them, that he was making changes and you could just see the other managers already got him where he wants him. And they've already playing this kind of chess game, and the other managers just got him exactly where he wants him. And now all of a sudden Derby are struggling. And so with Derby struggling, Rooney's now looking at the numbers, looking at the games, figuring out how many points they need, and deciding, instead of having a situation where you want to have some sort of style of play, he's chopping and changing a lot. I saw a statistic today. I think Derby's used 37 players, I think, this season, the most in the league, which is a ridiculously large amount. And he keeps chopping and changing. He changes his formation from week to week. He changes his personnel a lot from week to week. Obviously, that's not been the case for the last couple of weeks due to the injuries. But to go back to the first part of your question, what has Rooney changed? Rooney has just simplified everything. When you had Philip Cocu, who was probably very nice guy, did a lot for the community, did a lot for Derby, and handled a lot of things admirably last year, but he was the right guy at the wrong time. And what happens with that is he was being very, very complicated, and he's used to dealing with elite level players that play at the highest levels of the European game and the world game. And you're dealing with championship players here. And he's trying to say, okay, when you get into this position, these 3 people are going to make this exact run. When this guy gets the ball, and after those 3 runs, these 3 people are going to make these runs. And he was making it very, very complicated, and Derby did not have the personnel to play the way that he wanted to play. Rooney's come in, and he simplified everything. And he said, look, we're not going to pass it around the back as much. You'll still see Derby do it occasionally. We're not going to play out from the back as much as what we do under Cocu. We're going to let you go out and express yourselves. We're going to let you go out and do what you need to do. And he's just simplified everything so much. two caveats to Rooney's great run is he tightened everything up defensively. I think there was a stretch of games, wasn't there, Jason? There was about 4 or 5 games for a period of time early in January where Derby only conceded 3 shots on goal. And they kept 4 clean sheets, and it was amazing. They kept Brentford at bay with that attack as well. And I think Brentford had like 2 of the 4 shots or something ridiculous like that. So he tightened him up defensively, and he was very, very fortunate in the fact that Krystian Bielik came back from injury, really came back from injury right when Rooney started to take over. He either had just come back from injury or was just starting to find his form. I don't know the exact dates, but Bielik was playing his best football under Rooney's early tenure. And that was just such a difference for Derby. His range of passing, the way he was breaking up play and protecting the back four was so great. And to that, Derby started picking up the occasional goal from Colin Kazim-Richards, who has been really the talisman and arguably Derby's best player this season. He's certainly Derby's most attacking threat. So really, in answer to your question, Ryan, he's tightened it up at the back. He simplified it. But the injury to Bielik really disrupted Derby. They didn't get some results. They've been on a terrible run now, just like Rovers. They've been on a terrible run. I don't think for 15 games. I think for about the last 10 games, I would think they've been on a really, really, really bad run. And the confidence of this team is so low, and you just don't have any faith as a fan sometimes that they'll pull a result out. I mean, when Derby go a ball behind, they have enough fight where they can get back into the game, but you don't really sit there and watch the game and think, yeah, we're a goal down, but we can go back and win this game. They did a great job against Brentford. They were 2 down and Brentford wiped the floor came out in the second half and played a completely different team, Derby were, and they got a draw with a great last minute goal from Louis Sibley. But he simplified things. He's tightened it up at the back, and he's been very fortunate with Bielik coming in from injury, but those injuries have just really disrupted that. And like I said, now he's just trying to chop and change and playing to the opposition. And obviously you want to have a style of play, but let's not beat around the bush. Derby need points on the table. They're in a relegation dogfight, and they need to get out of it. And the only way you're going to do that is put points on the board. So yes, look at how Rovers set up. Yes, look how Norwich set up. Yes, look how these teams set up and adjust your team accordingly. But sometimes with chopping and changing too much, the players 3 at the back, 4 at the back, 3 with wing backs, 5 in midfield, 2 in midfield, 4 up top, in a diamond. It's confusing sometimes to the players, and I'm often of the belief, yes, you want to get your points, but you also want to have some sort of steady progression, right, throughout the season. This is kind of the way we want to play. So I can't sit here and say, Ryan, this is how Wayne Rooney Wazzaball this is what Wazzaball looks like, because he continues to chop and change, which is just the nature of the beast that Derby are in. But the simple answer is he simplified it and tightened it up at the back.
And for Rovers fans who are interested, over the same period, which is since the 14th of November when Philip Cocu was sacked, over that 30-game period, Rovers would be below Derby in 18th spot with 8 wins and 33 points to Derby's 10 wins and 37 points. So not good form for Rovers there. Jason, I want to talk to you just about one thing which Rovers fans will certainly relate to, and that is potential change of ownership at the club. Mel Morris is obviously trying to sell the club right now, and it's been close to happening on a couple of occasions before. But Eric Alonso, a 29-year-old Spanish businessman, has now agreed to buy the club. So what's the latest there, and how's that going down with Derby fans?
The latest, as far as I know, is everything's signed, sealed, and it's all just waiting on EFL approval, which they were hopeful would be by tomorrow, I think. But, Derby have made this mistake in the last 12 months before, keep putting dates on things, and then it not happen. But it looks imminent. I think this one, if he passes the fit and proper person's test from the EFL and that kind of thing, which I don't think anybody's ever failed, this one will go through. I think the proof's kind of there. The other one, the previous takeover earlier on this season went kind of the other way. It kind of got the EFL approving really, really quickly. Everything was kind of thought was done, but then turns out that the money wasn't there. I think it sounds as if this one was kind of done in slight in reverse, probably to make sure that we don't go, get led down the same path again. So it's, as far as we know, it's imminent. I can't even say that word. Imminent, that one. And yeah, 29-year-old doesn't fill me personally full of confidence. Corey, you'll probably know I'm not going to go on a rant, Ryan, but I've got some views on this that I think certain parts of our supporters will agree with, but it doesn't sit well with me. It really doesn't. If in 18 months' time he's thrown in 150 million like he's proposing to do, if that's what it takes to get Derby to the Premier League, and we're sat here in 2 years' time talking about Champions League football, then I'll find this episode, Ryan, and I'll ask you to delete it. But it's one of those. It's a gamble, but it's a gamble that Derby have got to take, because it's for having an owner. Obviously, I know when you was on our show the other day, it was heavily spoken about your ownership and our ownership over the years, bar 3 or 4 years, really has been quite local. It's always been a local businessman that's had the club, and obviously it gives fans a certain feeling. But certainly under Mel's case, and in previous tenures of ex-Derby chairmen who've been from the area, it's the ruling of heart over head. And Mel's thrown money at Derby County. There's no doubt about that whatsoever. But he's practically come out without saying the exact words and said, I'm not gonna bankroll Derby County anymore. I don't want to bankroll. I don't think it's the fact he can't afford it. I just don't think he wants to anymore. He's had the club. I think he's certainly been involved with the club for at least 7 or 8 years. I think he's been the main owner of Derby County for at least 6. And in any championship team that stayed in the championship for as long as that, that's going to take a hit on finances, because I don't think there's many clubs in the championship that are making money, if any, really, other than the ones obviously that are getting the parachute payments, and even half of those aren't. So, it's going to drain you. Obviously, Derby over the last 5 or 6 years, certainly under his tenure as chairman, has been an absolute roller coaster. Anybody that's interested in that, come and be a Derby fan, because you'll get more thrills out of it than the Pepsi Max at Blackpool, that's for sure. But it's one of those, and it's at the point now where we know the chairman doesn't want to stay, so the club needs selling. He wants to sell. That clearly means that you are probably going to get certain bids from certain parties that are trying to pick up a cheap deal and things like that. And me and Corey had this discussion on our podcast a couple of weeks ago. Our chairman's always come out and said he'll only sell to the right people, and I challenged that, and I said I don't think that's the case anymore, because he's come out in media, mainstream media, local media. He wants out, so why would he do what's best for the club? All he wants is his money, and he wants to get down the road. Some Derby fans might call me for saying that, but that's the reality of it. He said he wants to leave. He said he's happy to obviously look after things until this takeover goes ahead, and he's happy to fund wages and things like that, but he doesn't want to put any more money in. And so as soon as that's the case, you've got to sell on, and at the end of the day, you're only going to get taken over by people that are interested. And over the last 7 or 8 months that the talk's been about, there's been I think 3 or 4 names that have cropped up over and over again who you believed were probably the media probably got that right. They are the main backers or main interested parties, and I don't think any of them have necessarily filled me full of great confidence. But I don't think in any takeover situation, you never know how it's going to play out. So it's one of those, really. I mean, if he wants to come in, he said all the right things in interviews. He said he was going to make no comment, and then has done about 8 interviews since he said he was going to make no further comment. He's got an interesting social media lifestyle. He's a very interesting person when you get to read about him. The age thing is a bit of a worry for me. 29. I mean, I wasn't 29 all that long ago, and I certainly wasn't looking at running a football club, that kind of thing. So it'd be interesting to know. Don't know if the money for the deal is all his. He says it is. Reports have been that that's possibly not the case, but certainly as these things are progressing over the last few days, there's a lot of that's come out in media, and you just don't know what to believe. Same with anything, you don't know until it's physically in there. And I said to Corey a couple of weeks ago, I think we're just at the point now where you've just got to take it. You've just got to take the punt with it. In 18 months' time, you could be in that Premier League. You could be in League One. But I think either of those scenarios are not going to get any better with what's currently going on. So the club has to be sold. It's just a 50-50 gamble with me. But again, same with any kind of takeover. You just don't know what's coming. But you've got to hope one thing and hope, obviously, it doesn't go another way. And we've seen both sides of that spectrum over the last 20 years as Derby fans. So it's just one of those where you fasten your seatbelts and enjoy the ride, I think.
Absolutely, and certainly a couple of things what you said there, Jason, resonate with Rovers fans. You know, the transfer of ownership between the Walker Trust to Venky's obviously ultimately was wrong for Rovers, hence why we find ourselves where we are now, and obviously we've been down to League One as well. And I think obviously most Rovers fans would agree that, you know, long term we would love a change of ownership. But what you've said there, you know, who are going to buy football clubs that are bleeding money? And I think that will always be a problem for Rovers when we're moving on from Venky. So, you know, two things that really resonated with me with what you said there, Jason, and I'm sure other Rovers fans. So, Corey, I'm going to move us on then. You know, we've spoken a lot about the transition and how it feels for Derby at the moment and with that change of ownership as well. But obviously, we're going to talk about the game as well now. Derby's away form, not the greatest this season. I've got another graphic to show for that one. Just the 5 wins away from home this season and a low number of goals as well. But, you know, if we think about the game, Rovers are only 1 win in 15, but Derby are only third to Rovers' form with that 1 win in 10 games, as you said. So ultimately, you know, what has the story been away from home for Derby this season? You know, what's been going on?
Ryan, to be honest, the home form is not much better for Derby. Yeah, I think when you look at Derby, it's just consistently inconsistent. I mean, they're capable of a performance on their day like they did in Norwich in the autumn, where they can set up, they can frustrate top teams, and then they can come away with the odd goal and get the victory. And then they're capable of completely capitulating. And you never really know what you're going to get with this Derby team. And I think that's one of the frustrating things from fans is, you know, you don't know which Derby County is going to show up from week to week. And that's a frustration. And that's something that really irritates me, you know, who watch them and things like that. And you expect to see, again, this consistency in this performance and things like that. And you don't get it. I think that the mentality, I don't want to say a mentality issue, but I'm going to use a term that one of the guys on Sky Sports said, it was either Gary Neville or Jamie Carragher. You know, they called Liverpool last season were mentality monsters, and this season they're mentality minnows. And Derby are definitely in the mentality minnows camp from my perspective. I look at it and I think, you know, sometimes they can go a goal down, their heads can drop, you know, as they do with all teams. But yeah, it's hard to put on what's different about this because there's no fans in stadiums. We're well aware of that, and so really you would think that home games and away games are pretty much the same. And it's just generally for Derby, it's just been poor overall, really. You know, it's really hard to just put a finger on it. I mean, Derby, they've got strikers that couldn't finish their lunch. I mean, you can literally just put them in an all-you-can-eat buffet and they just miss everything. I mean, you know, it's Colin Kazam-Richards has been the one bright spot with that, but his goals have dried up as late. I mean, they've got Lee Gregory, who's out for the season. He came in January, got 3 goals, and he's second joint top goal scorer for the club. So that tells you what they need. I mean, I could sit here, me and Jason could sit here, and I can tell you the top 5 Derby goal scorers and the amount of goals that they've scored off the top of my head, which is not great when I only have 5 fingers, right? So I can just tell you. So the lack of the goals is a concern, and then sometimes defensively the players can get caught out of position. Nathan Byrne's been fantastic for Wigan. Nathan Byrne's been fantastic for Wigan. No, he's been fantastic for Derby. They got him from Wigan. Lee Buchanan as well. But sometimes when they get pushed up the field, they can expose the center halves get exposed, as all teams do. Matt Clark, who is out tomorrow, is not the fastest man on the planet. He's not going to beat Usain Bolt in the foot race. He probably beat me, but that's about it. And you know, Andre Wisdom, for as experienced as he is and for the strength that he shows in the team for physical strength and his physicality, he does get caught out of position from time to time as someone who's 29 years old, I think, and he should be playing at his peak right now. They're relying on Andre Wisdom. They're relying on 18-year-old Teden Mengi, who they got on loan from Manchester United, who's one of Manchester United's top prospects, and played for them early in the Europa League. But he's this season, and he's been performing admirably. But defensively, there's a lot of issues, Ryan. Sometimes they play 3 at the back. Sometimes they go with the 2 and then the fullback, so that makes a 4. But then the wing backs push on. So the lack of goal scoring, the frailties defensively, the mentality plays a role into it as well. And the other thing I think you'll notice, Darby don't have a lot of creativity, or didn't have a lot of creativity in midfield in any attacking positions since the comeback of Tom Lawrence, since he's come back and been fit again from injury, since his arrival and reintroduction into the team. They've looked a little bit more. It shows how important Tom Lawrence is to this team. And Patrick Roberts, as of late, has also provided a little bit of a creative spark. But Lawrence has missed large chunks of the season, and Roberts only joined in January and only made his first couple starts a couple games ago. So, yeah, it's really all over the field, Ryan. You've got a lack of goal scoring. The creativity is not there in midfield to create any chances. And like Jason said, no one else other than a forward's going to finish a ball off. And then defensively, Darby can be great, and then they can be not so great. And they can get cut open and expose them. And David Marshall's made a couple errors this season, but it's not, individuals. All goalkeepers make errors. And when they make them, goals are conceded, so you're going to remember them. But he's really solidified the defense. But, it's difficult sometimes when your defenders are leaving you that exposed to, you can't save everything.
Sure. And Jason, Corey's obviously highlighted, lots of things there that haven't gone right for Derby this season, some long-term over the season, some in this recent run of form that you've had. But as I said earlier, this is a huge game for both sides, I feel, and Rovers are in that rotten run of form with 1 win in 15 games. We're against sides all below us now until the end of the season, who must be spotting an opportunity to leapfrog us. So despite what Corey said there, how do you see Derby approaching this game? Can you see yourselves really going for it and trying to catch Rovers?
What they might want to do and what actually happens on the pitch, we've seen this season have been two massive things. I mean, one thing that you may well know, Ryan's going on at the minute, is Rotherham are playing Coventry, and I believe Coventry have just gone 1-0 up against Rotherham. So that makes it a little bit more interesting. We're the set after the last 5. We've got 4, other than Swansea, who was second to last game. We're all playing teams in and around. We've got yourselves, Preston, Birmingham, and Sheffield Wednesday. So I've been speaking with a fair bit of our fan base today on Twitter, and a lot of people are saying, it's coming out of the club as well, don't get me wrong, that the next 2 games, yourselves Friday night and then Tuesday, we're at Deepdale against Preston, they're massive games for Derby, and they are. But we're not in any form. Exactly this. I think it is 1 win in 10, like Corey alluded to earlier. I mean, going into back-to-back away games, just because they're in and around you in the table, that's fine. Stoke are in and around us in the table. We went to Stoke just before the international break, and it was one of the worst games of football I've seen all season. Just before that, we played Wycombe, and yet we beat them at their place 2-1. But arguably they were the better side. They should have. And it took, I think it was a 90-minute, 89th or 90th minute goal for us to win that 2-1. So just because the teams are in and around us, it doesn't seem to show much at the moment from Derby. And actually, if you actually look at those 5 or 6 away wins this season, I would argue that 4 out of those have probably come against teams in the top 10. So it's very difficult to say. I mean, after the international break, we played Luton at home. We played relatively okay. Unfortunately, we had 2 injuries, both of them up front. The next game we go to Reading, we played okay. We lose our main centre-half. We're getting injuries at the wrong time. That's not helping us. Doesn't look like, as Corey alluded to, doesn't look like any are going to be making it back for tomorrow night. So we are a bit makeshift, and we are quite lightweight, certainly going forward. And that's my worry. Whilst Blackburn have been on that bad run, they've still, for me personally, looking at it from a Derby's perspective, I still look at that Blackburn team, and they've got, you could name 3, 4, 5 players, I think, that on their day can do, turn up against Derby. I challenge you to do the same thing with this Derby side, because you just couldn't. I don't think me and Corey could predict 5 players who have done it this season enough, or have got a name for themselves enough where they can do it. And I think that's probably the big key here. We were better in January. New manager bounce, as Corey mentioned, Krystian Bielik. He was massive for Derby in that 5 or 6 games that he played, and it's not surprising that we won probably 4 out of those 6, and since then forms fell off the face of the earth. Since the last international break, as I say, Luton, Reading and Norwich just gone at the weekend, we've performed okay. We've not put the ball in the back of the net when we should have done, but that's been a problem that we've had all season. So the game tomorrow night boils down to if Derby will create chances. There might only be half chances, but Derby will create chances. It's just if they're going to put them away. If they can, we've seen this season when they have scored earlier on, you can see the weight lifted off the shoulder that they found the back of the net, and they're not already 1-2 goals behind. So it does kind of depend. I would still put down, for me personally, I'd still think Blackburn are the favourites for tomorrow night. I still think Blackburn will beat Derby tomorrow night. I'm not gonna powder coat it at all. I do think that. But if Derby can nick something early on, we said the same against Norwich on Saturday. Teams who've come to Pride Park and not been able to get a goal against us in that first 15, 20 minutes, Derby then seemed to grow into the game. Don't know really why Derby can't start too much on the front foot. We started on the front foot against Luton at home, scored within 7 minutes, and what in the end rolled out a comfortable victory for Derby, although Luton had 1 or 2 chances. So that first 10-15 minutes of the game on Friday night, it's going to be massive. If Derby can get something, maybe not even a goal, it's just a couple of chances, just to get a feel into the game, and Blackburn don't sucker punch Derby in that first 10-15 minutes, I think it could be better for Derby. But ultimately, I think, going into a relegation battle with 5 games to go, and expecting all of a sudden, after a team that's only won 10 games all season, from a Derby's perspective, to win back-to-back away games, it's not going to happen, in my opinion. If it does, it'll be an absolute miracle. Can't see it myself at all. So it's one of them games. But obviously, I am optimistic as a Derby fan. I want Derby to do well, of course. But I've seen nothing really this season in long enough periods that would convince me that Derby can get a positive result tomorrow night, and hence the reason why they are where they are, Ryan, to be honest.
Well, you're absolutely right to highlight the early goal or going in front against Rovers. That is the key to any victory over Rovers, because we invariably do not win games of football when we go behind. So that is absolutely the game plan that you should be going for. So you're right to pick that one out. So we've spoken about some of these already. We do this every week on the show, just pick out the key performers across goals, assists and ratings. Corey and Jason have spoken about Krystian Bielik, a few times. So I'm not going to come on to Bielik. You can see the importance of him there with his ratings and with what Corey and Jason have said. But Corey, I want to ask you about Colin Kazim-Richards, because, again, you've referenced him a little bit, but he was a player who was on loan at us for a season in our first season back in the Championship after relegation from the Premier League. And he was a player I really liked, actually. We had Jordan Rhodes, who was like the marquee signing, but Kazim-Richards, I did like him. He was a good player for us in that season. So what has he brought to you this season? He is the top goal scorer with 7. I think he's 34, 35 years old. So what's he brought to your side?
He's brought grit, he's brought determination, and he's brought leadership. And those are the best 3 attributes that he's brought to this side. Yeah, I remember him at Blackburn. He started off as a bit of a flying winger, and then he changed his last name to play for Turkey to Colin Kazim, and then he went to Fenerbahce, and he's really been around the world. So, I think he's played in like 8 different countries or something crazy like that. And he was last in Mexico at Pachuca, and then they obviously released him. And Derby were on the lookout for a big number 9 all season, because, they got rid of Chris Martin, who kind of split the Derby fan base. Personally, I know Jason and myself would have kept him, but Derby needed to go in a different direction because the number of years weren't there. So you've eventually got to move on. Derby only offered like a 1-year deal. Martin was looking for a 3. So it just reached an impasse. And all season, it was kind of anticlimactic, I would think, in a way, because Derby were kind of sitting there and they were thinking, oh, well, we need to get a number 9. And there was a lad from Darmstadt, center forward, named Cedar Durson. The deal was pretty much agreed. And then Derby didn't want to pay this extra $500,000 because they could get him on a free. But then with Brexit, they probably won't ever get him now. And up rolls transfer surprise, Colin Kazam-Richards on a free, 34-year-old, like you say. And now he's a forward. He's reinvented himself as a forward. So I don't think we really knew what to expect. And I'm sitting here eating a bit of humble pie because I was sitting here and thinking like, yeah, is he really the man for Derby? And I wasn't necessarily keen on it, but he came in. He came in. He was trying to get his fitness. And then after 𝒂𝐐𝐒 was sacked, Rooney, I think, started him in one of his first games in charge. And he's been absolutely immense for Derby. I cannot overstate how important he has been for Derby this season. You can see there with his 7 goals. He's been the main supplier of goals, but more importantly, he's brought a grit, a determination, and a lot of leadership to this group. And I think those intangibles speak real volumes for who he is and his experiences that he's had in the game. And they've been invaluable to Derby, especially this young Derby team with a lot of youngsters around here who, when the youngsters were coming through the ranks, aren't really used to losing in this way because the under 23, the youth teams do quite well. And, he gave an interview with Rams TV, the club's media channel, and just basically said, like, I looked at the table and there's no reason why we should be down here and stuff. And the way he fights for balls, the way he grapples and his work rate and those kind of things have just been immeasurable on how much they've helped Derby. And then in addition, you've got him popping in with goals, right? He's scored 2 absolute stunning goals this season. One against Nottingham Forest, which he ended up tapping Tyler Blackett on the side for, which was just a worldie. And then he did one a couple weeks later that was arguably even better. I forget who it was against. Jason might remember, but he hit it again. It was like from like 30 yards and it just went flew top corner. And it was just amazing. It was such a good goal. And he's been immense he's just been absolutely immense. And I'm eating a lot of humble pie because I wasn't his biggest fan when he came in because it's not sexy. You sign a 34-year-old journeyman striker as your marquee club number 9, at least. It's just not sexy. Okay. It's like me in a Speedo. It's not sexy. It's not good. And so, but he's been fantastic and they've given him an extra year extension. So he'll be around next season. And then at the end of that, I think he's got the option to go into kind of the coaching staff and he fully deserves it. And the only issue is that he's the one thing that I would say that's a little bit disappointing in this. And this is and this would be the same as I would believe it's probably the same for Rovers fans, that if you're center forward, you're relying on a 34-year-old journeyman striker as your main source of goals. It's got to be a concern, right? No matter what his personality or how he's on social media or what he does in the club press. Couple that with Derby's had Martin Waghorn injured, Lee Gregory injured, and a couple of the young lads who play striker injured, Jack Stretton among them. They've having to give Colin Kazam-Richards pain injections to play. At least they did a couple weeks ago for a hip injury they sustained. And for me as a club long-term, if you're giving pain injections to a 34-year-old journeyman to lead the line because you've got nobody else to get goals, that can sum up your previous questions you asked, Ryan, in just that one statement there. That is one of the main concerns. Colin Kazam-Richards has done amazing. This is not a slight on him. This is like looking at the club personnel-wise, right? That's who you're relying on, and you're having to give him pain injections. But he's been absolutely fantastic, and his influence goes a lot more than just the stat sheet and numbers and ratings and 5s out of 10s and 6 out of 10s and whatever. The intangibles that he has provided, the grit, the leadership, the fight, the work rate, you can't overstate it enough how important he's been for Derby this season. And I if they didn't have Colin Kazam-Richards, I would really, really be scared to see where Derby would be in this table. Not only because of his production on the field, but also off.
Yeah, absolutely. And Rick, matching my sentiment here, Colin Kazam-Richards is a dead cert to score. That always happens against Rovers. So I'm going to be nervous about him and Tom Lawrence tomorrow if he makes an appearance. So
and Ryan, another interesting fact I learned today, Colin Kazam-Richards and Bradley Johnson, yes, former Derby County midfielder Bradley Johnson, they're like best mates, apparently. And they're godfathers to each other's children. And they've never played against each other since they were age of like 15. So maybe Colin will kick Bradley or Bradley will kick Colin. I don't know.
There you go, Rovers fans. Corey providing the absolute trivia for us tonight. Love that fact, Corey. Love it. So before we do the score predictions, as we always do, we've asked Jason and Corey for the predicted 11 for Derby. Jason, I'm going to come to you on this. Some of the players we've spoken about already, Kazim Richards we've spoken about, but I just want you to talk us through the side and who might hurt Rovers tomorrow. And if you can, pick up Michael's question here about Patrick Roberts, floats around from loan to loan. How would you judge him as well? So if you can, just cover who's going to hurt Rovers and a little bit about Patrick Roberts as well.
I think looking at it from kind of goalkeeper up, Nathan Byrne, who plays at right back, he's missed the last 2 games with a concussion he picked up. So obviously the new concussion rule, he missed out for 7 days. You had him on one of your other graphics there. He's only got 2 or 3 assists, but I tell you what he can do down that right wing. There he is with 3 assists, his joint. For a right back, I mean, the guy runs all day. He goes up and down. One of the things that you find when obviously you've got that kind of player, maybe one side of the wing back role is better than the other. And early on this season, people were kind of questioning his defensiveness. But I tell you what, actually, I don't see that personally. I think he's as solid as we've had at right back for quite some time, and the man can get to the bar line, and he will put crosses in. It will be an out ball. Down Derby's right-hand side predominantly has been our stronger side, even though Tom Lawrence is just starting to drift back in, who possibly will be on the left, or even actually playing in kind of a 10 role, maybe. But down our right side, linking up with Patrick Roberts, who, he's a name that obviously he's floated in and around, meant to be, obviously coming from Man City, he's obviously not rubbish. He took a while to settle at Derby. He didn't come straight into the team, even though we were lacking so much in width and in creativity, and he couldn't find his way into the team. And he obviously, I think he'd been at Middlesbrough early on this season for the first part, and he was getting game time. I don't think he was getting lots of game time, but he was getting game time, and it was a bit of a wonder why he was brought in and then he was on the bench. Then he didn't make the 18. I think he must have been 4 or 5 games in, and literally he'd come on. I don't know if it was Forest's debut or the game before, and he came on for like a 10-minute cameo, did okay. I think he did come on against Forest, looked okay, got a start the next game, and he was hauled off at half time, and that's been very much up until probably 2-3 games ago, like I think Corey made mention to earlier. He's been very hit and miss, but he does come across as one of those players that he kind of needs that time. He needs that little run in the side, which ultimately Derby haven't really been able to give him, because there has been that much chopping and changing, trying to find that winning formula as we were sliding further and further down the table. So I can understand it from both sides, but Patrick Roberts certainly over the last 2 games has looked better. I would fully expect him to be involved tomorrow night, definitely. And down that right-hand side's certainly one of the stronger sides. And then you look at the left-hand side, certainly the left wing-back in Craig Forsyth. The man can get up, but he does put a mean ball in. But he's 31. He's the wrong side of 30, 31, 32. He won't venture as further forward as that. So that does mean that Kamil 𝐒𝐍𝒑 will possibly play on the left. It might be, as I say, that 𝐒𝐍𝒑 and Lawrence kind of maybe swap with that. But you'll see predominantly 𝐒𝐍𝒑 out on the wing. An exciting young Polish lad who, in fits and starts, certainly at the start of the season, showed quite a lot of promise. He went through quite a bad patch. And I think his 1 goal and 1 assist, or 1 goal and 2 assists, unfortunately kind of sums up what we've seen of him this season. Bags of potential for a 22-year-old, I think he is. Bags of potential, but his finishing and his end product is pretty poor. But he is a natural winger. He is an out-and-out winger. You will see him trying to take players on. You will see him on the ball a lot, I think, tomorrow, as he has been in most games. And he does 9/10 of his role so well. He tracks back really well. He puts his foot in. He wings tackles. He links play up. But then when he's in that final third, when you think to yourself, go on, that he'll shimmy defenders. He'll take defenders on. He hasn't got a problem with that. And he'll take 2 or 3 on, and then he'll check back to get it on his better foot. And you think, right, this should go into the top corner, but then he'll go into row Z, or he'll make a pass, or he'll lose the ball, and there's just certain bits to him. But at 22, of course, you can mould that kind of a player. But he's going to be a threat. Colin Kazim-Richards, Corey's just mentioned everything. I can't argue with anything that he's just said about Colin Kazim-Richards, apart from since he picked up that hip injury 4 or 5 games ago. I don't think he's been the same player. I don't actually think he's fit, but he is a case of we must use him. And everything that Colin was giving us when he started to get into the team has slightly slipped away a little bit because of this niggle that he's got with his hip. Obviously, it's been 6 days since we last played. Hopefully that helps him. Hopefully that's giving him a little bit more time, because he is a focal point. There's no doubt about it. Tom Lawrence, we know what Tom Lawrence can do. 1 minute he's brilliant, putting 25-yard shots into the top corner like he did against Reading at the Medeski 3 weeks ago. He's then falling over looking for penalties that he hasn't been touched. So he's one of those players where you just never know what you're going to get with him, and that's why he's in the side. Because actually, if you put him down, you'd asked a lot of our fans, do you think Tom Lawrence deserves to be in the side? I think the majority would say no because of his work rate, but he does things that kind of go unnoticed, and because he has got that, he can just pull something out of the hat. That's why he's in that starting 11 for me personally. And then the midfield, Graham Shin is very much a player that keeps the engine ticking in midfield. Jason Knight, who's been in and out of form over the last few weeks, who certainly was a bright spot from last season and the start of this. He's the engine of Derby. He is a box to box. He will get in there if he's selected. We presume this is going to roughly be the formation and the lineup that's going to come tomorrow night. If you can nullify Derby's midfield too, of Shinnie and Knight, then Derby gets suffocated. They'll go to long balls, and if Colin's obviously not 100% fit, he doesn't necessarily he's not winning all his battles. It'll starve Tom Lawrence. It'll starve 𝒑𝒆𝒔𝒏 and Roberts, who will make those runs off Colin, and that's where Derby will struggle. But if we're allowed to play a little bit more, and we're allowed to get the ball down and allowed to put our onus onto Blackburn, we can cause Blackburn trouble with the way that we play there, and then it'll just be all about taking our chances, which, as I said earlier, we've not always done this season, unfortunately. And when chances have been at a premium this season, it's not that we've been creating loads and just not putting them in the back of the net. We haven't been creating them either, other than the last probably few weeks have been a little bit better. But we're definitely going to have to put chances away tomorrow if we want to take anything out of the game.
Absolutely. And whilst you've been talking, Jason, I'm trying to work out whether this Coventry-Rotherham result is good or bad for us, because I'm looking at it. If Derby were to win tomorrow, and with Coventry getting that win, things are stacking up. And if Rotherham were to win those games in hand, boy, I still can't work it out whether it's good or bad. So Rovers fans, we've reached the part of the show where I'm going to ask Jason and Corey for their score predictions for tomorrow night. Please do load in your score prediction into the comments, and we'll run through those before the end of the show. So, Corey, I will start with you. What is your score prediction for tomorrow? How do you think it's going to go?
You got to give me the tough question, Ryan. I didn't agree to come on to do a score prediction. No. I think when you look at it, I think both teams need to win this game. I know when we spoke earlier this week on our podcast, Rovers need to get a win, or they need to get a draw out of this game to be considered a good result. Derby can't afford a draw. Derby have to win because they're running out of games. And yes, Rotherham's losing right now, but they've shown that they've got something a little bit more about them than what a lot of people give them credit for. Look, the table doesn't lie. They're third bottom, but right now Derby's fourth bottom. And when you look at the live league table, because Coventry's pushed away, both these teams need a win. I know that Blackburn's been on a terrible run. They have to finish their terrible run. Derby's been on a terrible run. They eventually have to finish their terrible run. And so I think, with as consistently inconsistent as Derby has been this season, there's only one way that I can see this game going. And that's going to be, unfortunately, something that doesn't help Derby. And that's going to be a draw. I'm going to go for a 1-1.
1-1, interesting. Jason, what's your prediction?
Not as optimistic as Corey, unfortunately. I think yeah, as I said, mentioned earlier, a lot of our fan base are saying these next 2 games are massive, and don't get me wrong, they are massive in the context of Derby season. But if most fans are expecting Derby to come to Ewood and then go to Deepdale in 4 days later and come out with 6 points, I think they've obviously not been watching the same Derby County that I've been watching. I think the way that Derby have kind of played over the last 3 or 4 games since the international break, we beat Luton. We actually were on the wrong end of a 3-1 against Reading, but played much better than that. And then, league leaders Norwich, who were storming away, we put up quite a good fight. And it's something that Corey mentioned earlier, even though, no fans in the ground should kind of be a bit of a leveler in terms of, home and away performances really shouldn't matter. You look at the graphics and you look at the league table of home and away. Derby's home form and away form are practically identical. I think the home form's slightly better with one result. And of course, if the result went Derby's favour tomorrow night, I think they'd practically be identical. We've won exactly the same at home as we have away. It's been the same. So for me, I think everything that we've talked about so far on this episode, Derby have struggled for goals. Yes, Blackburn are out of form, but you have got Armstrong, who's obviously on however many he's in double figures. That doesn't just go away. Derby have struggled all season to score goals, whereas obviously Blackburn haven't, certainly at the start. I'm not confident, I'm afraid. I'm not. I don't think Derby have necessarily got the greatest of records either at Ewood Park over the last few seasons. So for me, I'm afraid for Derby, it's going to be another game wanting points and not getting them. I'm going to go with a 2-1 win for Blackburn.
2-1 win for Blackburn from Jason. So Corey's right. It's a must not lose for Rovers. But ideally, if we were to win this game, I'll go as far as saying we will be safe at that point. To be 7 points clear of Derby with that many games left, we will have kept ourselves safe with the win. So for me, that's why I think it's the biggest game of the season, because if we lose it, we are absolutely right in the middle of a relegation battle. And then that result for Coventry, which, Chris has just pointed out here, is now full time. If we do lose tomorrow, that result for Coventry, coupled with those games in hand for Rotherham, boy, things get squeaky for Rovers. So it's huge for us tomorrow. And I just think we've got to go out there and be confident and go for the win. And I saw enough in that second half Cardiff performance on Saturday to suggest that we're up for the fight. It just felt a bit different in that second half on Saturday, and we were desperately unlucky. Hit the woodwork 3 times, and it could have been a different day on another day. So I'm going for a 2-1 Rovers win. I think we're going to do it. It's been a horrible season. In many respects, we can then switch off completely from the season if we do beat Derby tomorrow and really remove ourselves from this relegation battle. So I'm going to go for a 2-1 Rovers win. Rovers fans, you haven't got long to get your predictions in, so please do let us know. Jason's gone 2-1 Rovers. I've gone 2-1 Rovers. Corey is predicting a draw. And I'd take a draw as well, Corey, because it will keep you down there 4 points below us. And with our goal difference, I said it to you on your show, Corey, our goal difference is absolutely insane compared to everyone else, and Rovers are never in that position. There's only Rovers from Middlesbrough in 10th downwards who have got a positive goal difference, and as I say, we are never that club. So quite bizarre, our goal difference at the moment. And geez, I hope we're not relying on that come the end of the season. I cannot be contemplating a situation like that. So I think Alexander had one right at the start of the show. He did. He's going 3-2 Rovers. Wow, an absolute goal fest. Totally out on a limb with that. Yes, I listened to my heart again. Good on you, Alexander. We have had Michael, who said a 0-0. M Outlaw has gone a Desmond, a 2-2. And then Mark has gone 1-0 Rovers. And Rick, who wants the bragging rights over his missus, 4-0. Just imagine, Rick. An 8-0 aggregate would just be crazy.
All I can say is, Ryan, happy wife, happy life. So maybe a 4-0 is not ideal.
Rick will probably be chuckling at that one, Corey, I'm sure. And then JH has gone a Gallagher masterclass to win 2-0. Wow, if Sam Gallagher guarantees our survival with a masterclass tomorrow, JH, then I would love that, because he's been criticised all season. So what a story that would be for Sam Gallagher if he can do it. So come on, Sam Gallagher, get the job done. So there we go. We're going to end the show now, Rovers fans. Corey, Jason, thanks ever so much for joining us for this hour. It's been a really, really good insight into on and off the pitch, Derby County there. So Corey, I know that you're back to work, I think. So thank you for joining us from over in the States.
Ryan, thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, and hopefully we can chat next season when we're both still in the championship and we're not both in League One. But it's an absolute pleasure to come on and spend an hour with you and chew the fat over this game, which is going to be a very, very important game for both teams. So I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully, I like you. I'm looking forward to hopefully the season ending with Derby still in the championship, and we can have some time off in the summer. But again, thank you so much for allowing me to come on and coming onto our podcast earlier this season. And we look forward to chatting with you next year.
Yeah, no worries at all. And Jason, thank you as well.
Yeah, not a problem at all. Thanks for having us on. It's been a fun hour. Always talking about the negativity at Derby County is always.
And Jason, Ryan doesn't charge by the hour, so no. we can put all of our Derby County things and lay back on the old fainting chair and spill our guts, and it's perfect because Ryan doesn't charge, so it's even better.
That's it. But yeah, thanks very much for coming on ours earlier on, Ryan, and yeah, thanks for having us on this one. It's been a pleasure.
No worries at all. Thank you. And thanks, Rovers fans, for interacting with us this evening. As I say, it is the watch along tomorrow at 5:30. I'm going to be so nervous tomorrow. I can already feel my legs are wobbling a little bit thinking about it. So I'm going to be fired up tomorrow. We'll get the beers ready for the watch along. Come and join us at 5:30. It is that very odd kickoff time of 6 p.m. on a Friday, which is very inconvenient for many people. So, yeah, we'll get that game watched nice and early, and hopefully Rovers can go into the weekend on a better footing. And we'll follow straight after that with the post-match show, as we usually do. What will that be, about 8:15, I think it will be by the time that game is finished. Please, of course, give this video a like. Please turn on all notifications using that bell icon. And I will just leave you with two things before saying goodbye to Jason and Corey. We are sponsored by Blue Rose Capital. I'll do a big wave to Jason and Corey, and we are sponsored by 𝒑𝒆𝒔𝒆𝒔.com. See you later, everyone.
The Rovers Chat YouTube channel is proudly sponsored by 𝒑𝒆𝒔𝒆𝒔.com. They've got retro football from every era with mugs, phone cases and much more. They also have plenty of Rovers goods, including apparel with the famous 94-95 season and this season's kit. Check them out using the link in the description below.